going through those things, people have different backgrounds and things happen in their childhood growing up. How did you all navigate what I call the landmines of love in marriage? Because, people have trauma, they have different
Oh yeah,
experiences. So
absolutely.
what was your journey like as far as managing those spaces, managing those landmines in your marriage?
You want to start?
Now, mind you, when we started dating, like seriously dating, when he broke up with me at 14, then we started really dating for real at 18.
Yeah.
Okay.
So remember, we are 18. We got married at 21. My mom was an addict and she got killed by a serial killer. My mom was never married. So I grew up being raised by kind of everyone in my family.
Mm.
So I had a lot of rejection issues. I had a lot of insecurities about, because my mom was very verbally abusive. So I had a lot of baggage. That being said, I think that the difference between our generation, like we were very resilient because we had to be. If I didn't get things figured out, I didn't have a backup plan. I couldn't say, well, if this doesn't work out, then I'm gonna, because I was on my own. I lived on my own at 18. Gil's sister and I were roommates.
Okay.
So I think for us, because we didn't have social media, we didn't have we didn't have a lot of those things. So you really had to spend a lot of time with yourself. We walked a lot. So I did a lot of thinking. And so I think that I was very aware of things about me that I didn't want to do. So when me and Gil got together, I had already decided some things I didn't want to do.
Mhm.
And so I already had some boundaries for me. And so when we got together, I just saw him as someone who saw me and got me.
Mhm.
And I appreciated that.
Yep. And for me, my parents got divorced when I was younger. So what I did was I realized early in my life I wanted to be married even when I was younger. At that age of 14, 15, I knew I wanted a wife. I knew I wanted to be married. I knew that was an example of how I wanted to be. So and I started working on those things, and that little thought stuck in the back of my mind, that I want to be married. So therefore I also knew that there's things that I needed to learn and needed to do in order to be a husband. What it was, I had no idea or how I was going to accomplish it, but that was something that I knew I wanted to do. So when it comes to those landmines, that was something that I think I rethought about and tried and already decided before we even got together, or even before we walked down the aisle, or even got engaged, that I knew what I wanted from the very beginning. I think a part of what some people go through is you have to make up in your mind what you want from a relationship before you actually even get into it. And I think a part of that is about really you knowing you and being consciously aware of your strong suits and your shortcomings and things that you need to grow at. Because how can you be deficient in an area, realizing, let's just say it's communication or how you resolve conflict, and go into a relationship thinking it's going to fix itself? There are things that you're going to have to do and figure things out.
And you and I was the kind of person, I had a list of I was big on lists, pros and cons. What's the pros? What's the cons? What's the goods? What's the bads? And Gil and I, we talked about everything. I mean, he was my best friend. We talked about what we wanted to do when we got married and when we had kids, and who is your favorite person and who was my favorite person, and how is your credit? How is my? And we were 21. So all I can say is some of it was the way God wired us, but I also believe it was his hand on our life, because I believe he knew us in our mother's wombs. And so I think that was a big part of it, was God's hand on our life and the way he pre-wired us.